Roll.
Glenn Whitley, County Judge.
Here.
Roy Charles Brooks, Commissioner Precinct 1.
Present.
Andy H. Wynn, Commissioner Precinct 2.
Here.
Gary Fickus, Commissioner Precinct 3.
Here.
J.D. Johnson, Commissioner Precinct 4.
Here.
Constitutes a quorum.
Thank you. Our invocation this morning will be delivered by Pastor Randy Thomas from the Lake Country Christian Church. After the invocation, please remain standing for our pledges. Thank you for coming out today.
Let us pray today. Our gracious God, we come to you on this day, thanking you, Lord, for another day that you've given to us to rejoice and be glad in it. God, I ask you, Father, Lord, that you pour blessings over our judge and the city commissioners, all those that represent every division of our city, that this would be a city that would be of great light, not only over our region, over our county, but, God, over our state as we take it to the four corners of this world. For today, God, you are the great I am. You're Alpha, you're Omega, you're beginning, and you're the end. As we start this year off, we ask you, Father, Lord, that you would give us the strength and the wisdom that we need, that we would be men of integrity and honor, O Lord, as we lead the city. I ask you, Father, Lord, that you would pour blessings over it. It says in your word in Psalms, it says in Psalms 37, verse 5, it says that this is the day that we are to commit our ways to you. So, God, as we commit our ways to you, be Lord of all, O Lord, I pray. And, God, everything that we do, let the words of our mouth and the meditations of our heart be pleasing in your sight. We give you this day, and we give every decision that will be made to you today. In your name we pray all these things in Jesus' mighty name. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. On the Texas flag, I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Agenda announcements?
Your Honor, we have no announcements today.
You're just waiting to
Two in a
be able
row.
to say that, weren't you?
Two in
Been
a
very
row.
popular this year.
2 weeks in a row, yeah. You're doing pretty good there. Court members, you have before you the minutes of our regular meeting of January the 20th.
Move approval. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes almost unanimously. Commissioner Fickus? Unanimously. And I believe under resolutions and proclamations, you have a resolution. Commissioner Fickus?
I do, and I don't think Gary is with us today. This is going to be presented, I believe, on Friday, and this is I'm not going to read it here, but it's a congratulation resolution to Gary McCamey, who has absolutely been a wonderful city manager for the city of Euless, but probably more than that, he's been a real leader in Northeast Tarrant County, and he's somebody that's big shoes to fill, and they've got a great person that's filling them, and but we wish him the best. So, move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Court members, you have before you the consent agenda.
Move approval.
Second.
A motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Mr. Manius.
Thank you, Your Honor. Members of the Court, we have one additional item for you this morning. This concerns item number 1 under the Administrator's section. We're requesting that the Court adopt the legislative policy statement as it relates to the opposition of revenue caps on local governments.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Lieutenant Governor pushing this.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, sir.
Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Ms. Snyder.
No announcements, threw me out of cadence. The Risk Management Board is recommending the payment of 2 claims today. That is to Amy Fisher and Monty Briley for the amounts listed on your court communication.
Move for approval. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you so much.
Mr. Harris.
Your Honor, members of the court, the Criminal District Attorney of Tarrant County has one item on the agenda. We have today a check in the amount of $104.31, which is part of the antitrust litigation, which the court approved action in back in January of last year. And at this time, we would tender and request acceptance of the check in that litigation.
So move.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Mr. Harris,
Yes, Your Honor.
I hope this isn't a thing of things to come. You took longer to do that than Mr. Reich usually takes, and that's a hard thing to do. I do understand that this is the last day that we're going to potentially have officially that glow from the top of the head sitting over in that corner, and I do want to take an opportunity while we can to thank Ray for all the years of service you've given to Tarrant County and for everything that you've done.
I won't burden the court before time.
Thank you, Ray. Again,
First
thanks for
time
your
I've
public
seen
service.
that shiny head turn red.
Well, there's been a few times, but I don't think it was because we were recognizing it.
We need a vote.
But still going to be available by phone, I understand. Good.
Now, with regards to his, with Mr. Harris's motion, we'll go ahead and vote on that. All in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Ms. Glenn.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Tina.
We have several items for the court this morning. The first item, we're asking the court to receive and file the personnel agenda.
So moved. Second.
A motion is second to receive and file personnel agenda. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Our second item, we're asking the court to approve a waiver of terminal benefits for the district clerk's office. As described in your court communique, the criminal floor managers did retire at the end of December with 400 vacation hours. The district clerk is requesting a waiver of 224 of those hours effective January 31st at a net cost to the general fund of approximately $3,500.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion is second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Item number 3, we're asking the court to approve an out-of-class pay extension for community development. You've seen this item a few times. The supporting housing manager assumed the responsibilities of the assistant director of community development several months ago. The director continues to seek grant funds to fund the position in its entirety. She's not been able to do that as of yet, and so we're requesting an extension of out-of-class pay through April the 27th at a cost to the grant of approximately $1,000.
Move approval. Second.
A motion is second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
And the fourth item that we have, we're asking the court to approve changes to the table of organization for community development. This change will result in the reclass of a position and the creation of a project position at a cost to CDBG grant funds of approximately $41,160.
Move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion is second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any appointments today?
There are.
There are indeed. Go for it, Commissioner.
I am trading one Fisher for another Fisher for a younger Fisher. So I'm appointing Roger. I would like to appoint Roger Fisher to the JPS Board of Managers.
Second.
I passed out a little resume from Roger.
We have a motion is second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
And I want to thank Scott Fisher for all his hard work.
Is Scott here?
I don't think so.
No, I haven't
He has
seen it.
done us a great job for the 8 years I've been up here, and I think he was on there 2 years before that, probably, at least.
May very well have been.
So,
Your Honor, on the Historical Commission, I would like to reappoint Cindy Wilson Arick, Joe Purtle, and Billy Joe Gabriel. I would like to appoint Sarah Walker, and I do that without having her resume in hand because she is someone who is well known to this court and has headed the Black Historical and Genealogical Society here in Tarrant County for a number of years, so I would like to appoint her to a vacant spot.
I'll second all of that.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
And further, on TIFs 13 and 14, I appoint Ms. Kathy Young Jr. Kathy got married over the weekend.
Congratulations.
On TIFs 3 and 8, these are City of Fort Worth TIFs. TIFs 3 and 8, I appoint myself. And on TIF number 12, the East Berry Renaissance TIF, I appoint Shannon Fletcher. I think that takes care of my appointment.
I'll second those.
Okay.
Any discussion? All those in favor, please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Commissioner Fickus?
yes, I would like to make some TIF appointments, TIF number 7, and TIF number 10. I'd like to appoint myself. Move
Second.
approval.
A motion is second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Then we'll move right
Get
along.
a copy of that.
You have before you the,
Wait a minute.
Wait a minute, we got more.
okay.
If I'm required to make this, then I would like to appoint Steve Townsend to TIF number 4, the South Side, TIF number 6, Riverfront, and myself to the TIF 9, Trinity River Vision.
Second.
We have a motion is second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Who gave you that?
Don't know.
Lisa,
Sitting on my desk.
Lisa,
Who?
Lisa McMillan.
Lisa.
That's all right, I can see his. You don't have to give me one.
Any other appointments? Then we'll move on to the claims, including the addendum.
Move approval of the claims, including the addendum.
Second.
We have a motion is second to approve the claims, including the addendum. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Briefing items, Mr. Manius.
Thank you, Your Honor. We're going to take these somewhat out of order. I'm going to move to item number C, or item C, which is the Tex Rail project update. This update will be made by Mr. Paul Ballard, who is the President and Chief Executive Officer of Fort Worth T. Mr. Ballard.
Welcome.
Good morning, Judge Whitley, members of the court. Thank you very much for inviting me to be here. I'd like to introduce some of the folks who are with me this morning. Scott Mahaffey, our board chair back here. Carter Burdett, who's our board secretary at the T. Rebecca Montgomery, who is our legislative liaison. And then Deidre Whitmore, who's in charge of everything, sitting over here and running the presentation. So I have a few points I'd like to make with you this morning. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have. First of all, we'd like to start with a really short video that outlines the Tex Rail project. I don't think you've seen this before. It's done in a sort of a social media format. and we're getting lots of hits on the internet, so it must be great. So I'll ask the teacher to play that, and I'll be right back up in about 3 minutes.
Get ready to ride with TexRail. It's no secret that North Texas is growing fast. As a region, the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex recently had the 3rd largest population increase in the United States. Tarrant County's portion of that growth ranked it as the 8th largest increase in the nation. And with growth comes strong economic development and continued revitalization of our communities. And the new TexRail is laying down the groundwork to take North Texas where it needs to go, to take advantage of it all. Studies show that for every dollar spent on public transportation expansion, $4 is generated in economic returns. The investment in TexRail positions North Texas to fully realize the growth and promise of our entire region. From downtown Fort Worth to DFW International Airport, as well as all of the exciting places in between, TexRail is about more than just carrying passengers, better commuting, or improving our environment. It's about connecting to untapped potential like never before. New living opportunities, exciting new adventures, bustling commerce, tens of thousands of new jobs, and thousands of expanded job options, all now within reach across the entire growing Metroplex. And through the connection to DFW Airport, the possibilities go even further beyond. TexRail will meet the way changing generations prefer their mobility. According to the U.S. Census, 62% of people aged 18 to 29 would rather live in vibrant, mixed-use areas with public transportation over traditional sprawling suburbia. TexRail provides connections that aren't just a need or a desire. TexRail links cities, jobs, cultures, and enormous opportunity. But more importantly, TexRail brings people together and ultimately fuel our growth, expansion, and prosperity. TexRail provides access to the world around us and gives the world access to North Texas. Access that is vital to everyone's success. Quality public transportation helps provide energy independence. If just 1 out of 10 Americans used public transportation every day, there would be a 40% reduction in U.S. reliance on foreign oil. And we know all public transportation is good for the environment. In fact, one person with a 20-mile round-trip commute who switches from driving to public transit can reduce his or her daily carbon emissions by 20 pounds, or more than 4,800 pounds in a year. As North Texas continues to flourish, our community and influence expands around the globe. And at TexRail, we'll keep you moving so that we can keep growing, getting you where you want to go, whether it's local or abroad and in life. TexRail, keeping North Central Texas on track toward a better future.
Good. Well, I hope that gives you a good introduction, or actually you've had introductions before to the project. But if any of you would like to use that for your any public meetings you have, we'd be more than happy to provide that, or a speaker. So, next slide. This just shows at the relation with DART to the T. As you all know, back in August, DART opened their line to the airport. It's light rail, and they're coming into Terminal A, and we'll be at Terminal B. Next slide. And you can see the relationship between the two. So if someone wants to use DART light rail to the airport, they can connect with the T for those folks on those respective commuter lines. Next slide. This slide is gives you a summary of how the project is being funded. And in my prior employment, most of the time, we have a big problem coming up with the local funding, but we're in very good shape, and thank you for your contributions to this project. But as you can see, most of the local funding is either in the bank or committed. And then from the federal perspective, we're really in very good shape on the federal perspective. We're currently in the President's budget. We're working very closely with the Federal Transit Administration. They're very supportive of the project. What we're working towards right now is trying to get what they call a full funding grant agreement, and we should have that in place within 12 months. And what that does is that's the commitment of the federal government through the U.S. Department of Transportation to say that they will provide up to 50% of the project cost. And as I said, we feel very good about the fact that we're confident we're going to get that. Next slide, please. Oh, no, right there. This shows what we've done so far. The big step that we passed last fall in September was completing the environmental work. And the environmental work is always a big issue on these projects, but the Federal Transit Administration received and accepted our environmental work on September 29th of last year, included in the President's budget. We have a good rating with the federal government, and we're going through a recertification or an annual update with the Federal Transit Administration on the evaluation of the project. We feel very good about that. We expect to report back next month. Some of the other milestones that we're meeting right now, we issued a request for proposals for a construction manager general contractor last month. We're expecting responses by the end of this month. This will give us an opportunity to have construction folks come in and work with us early. We have our final design team is on the ground. They're working. They're doing the final design on the project. And so we'll have construction people working directly with them early on so that we'll have a very, very buildable project. We're also working at the same time on the vehicles. We've received a proposal from a company to build the actual rail cars for us, and we anticipate board approval of that contract probably in April. I mentioned the full funding grant agreement award, and then we anticipate, let me rephrase that, we will be in service in 2018. Can't pick the date right now until we get construction documents completed in about a year, but we'll be in service in 2018. It might be a New Year's Eve party, but we'll be operating.
What is your diverse contractor participation goal for this project?
We have a very high goal, and the number escapes me at the moment, but I'll get it for you. It's above 30%. But I'll provide that to you.
Thank you.
It's a significant goal. And we have great opportunities in construction to do that because there are so many quality companies. We've had a number of meetings through our DBE officer with prospective companies. We've had at least 2 meetings where we've invited many companies to come in. We've had a really good response. One meeting we had over 100 people come and talk to us. So we're in very good shape on that in that particular area. So here's the schedule I've covered, and that's kind of TexRail. I wanted to take just a minute while I'm here to talk about our master planning process. This is equally important as the TexRail project because what we're doing is we're taking a look at the fixed route service that we operate throughout Fort Worth in this region, and we believe that we can do a much better job in structuring our services to serve more of the area, to serve the county, and we've got a company under contract. We got some significant funding from the North Central Texas Council of Governments, and we'll be looking at all the services we provide. We'll have tremendous input from the public. In fact, we have our first 2 meetings today at the Intermodal Transit Center. We have stakeholders coming in today. We'll be meeting with them, and this will be just the first of many, and we hope that all of you will plug in and be involved in that process. We'll be doing, in addition to public meetings, social media, mobile meetings. We're actually taking a T-bus and designing it for mobile meetings and moving that around the community. We'll have TVs set up inside, tripods, special seating, and so we'll invite people to come in and talk about what they'd like to see for public transportation in this region. The end result is a comprehensive plan with maps and visuals laying out what we in the community should feel should be our network of public transportation for the future. So we're excited about that. It's being kicked off today, and we hope that you'll all participate. So that's kind of, in a nutshell, the 2 big issues that we're working on right now, TexRail and our master plan. I'll be happy to answer any questions on things I covered or anything I didn't cover.
Are all of these terminal locations already completed?
Yes,
I mean, there's no reconsideration for any of them? And I ask that question because I've been appointed to a committee for the Stockyards redevelopment plan, and there was a lot of discussion in our meeting last week about the terminal that's located up there, I believe, north of 28th Street.
On Decatur, yes, sir.
That a much more suitable location to fit, in their opinion, and there's a committee of about 15 of us, that the location on 23rd Street would put it directly between the historical Stockyards development and the downtown Fort Worth Trinity River Vision, that there would be a lot more use of that railroad if it were located there rather than as far north as it's located. And there was some interest in maybe getting y'all to come to one of our meetings, but if it's already etched in granite that that's where it's going to be, there's no need in that.
Well, I wouldn't say it's etched in granite, but the issue is we've done all the environmental work on the stations at their present locations, and we would incur some delay in getting the project done if we start changing station sites. But I'd be happy to take a look at it and see.
Well, it was my understanding in the brief time that we had to discuss it that y'all had looked at the 23rd Street location. Don't know if any environmental study was ever done on it, but
I don't know, but I'll be happy to look into that and get back to you. Yes, sir.
If you would take a look at that, and I'll get the representative from the city to get back with you.
Yes, sir.
You were not here with the T at the time that the original Tex Rail project was presented to this court, and we committed $20 million to support development of Tex Rail. That original project is about half of what the Tex Rail project has turned out to be to this point. I understand that there is to be a second phase at some point that will take the Tex Rail project from its terminus near downtown to southwest Tarrant County, which was the original project. Since we committed the $20 million to a bigger project, our $20 million has now been front-loaded to a much smaller project, and I just want to make sure that this Phase 2, which goes down into southwest Tarrant County, is still on the drawing boards, and that in order to get it done, we don't have to come up with another $20 million from this court.
Oh, gosh, I don't know how I could agree to that. That's down the road.
Or down the track.
Well, I should have said it that way. That's down the tracks. I can't really comment on the decisions that were made before I got here. I've been here about 8 months now. But, I've looked at that portion of the project, and it seems very viable to me. But after we complete, or while we get this project significantly completed, we'll certainly look at that, and that would be another whole putting together a new set of funding at that point. So I can't say that. Well, actually, I can say we'd be coming to you, I'm sure, to help with that portion as well, would be my guess. But
we gave.
Well,
I understand.
I have a question. Mr. Ballard, how are you planning to use the $20 million that the Tarrant County contribute toward the project? The reason I ask is I just found out that the ballot of the 2006 bond election did not say anything about transit or rail. And so can we legally do that? Take $20 million of a bond approved by the voters and dedicate it for a total different purpose that was mentioned on the project. So I'm a little bit unclear about that. So
I completely disagree with what you just said.
Let me try to answer that.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. When we first looked at the project itself, it was agreed that the monies would be utilized for those areas along highways that dealt with either crossings or improvements or things such as that were actually authorized by the county to perform those type of tasks. And when we did the initial analysis, that it was well over $20 million. So our money is not. The county's money is not going to be used for studies. It won't be used necessarily to build rail lines unless they cross highways. And we examined that point, and at that point we had bond counsel that became involved with it, and it was determined at that point that it qualified under our bond package.
Okay, so even though the wording is not on the ballot, it would still be legal for us
It's
to do
highway
that?
improvements, quite frankly.
Thank you for that answer, because I didn't have a good one. But I can confirm that that is how, precisely how we're planning the county funds, is for precisely those purposes.
And the $25 million from the regional toll revenue, does that come from NTTA or?
That's my understanding.
It's money off the Sam Rayburn toll,
I think that's right.
RTR money's off from Sam Rayburn.
And I would add that with regards to the 20 million, there was a lot of discussion in court throughout that process that 20 million was going to be used for the intersection improvements along this project. And while it may not have been delineated precisely in that, it was a discussion. It was among the group of folks that evaluated projects. It was always very clearly communicated that there was 20 million being set aside for that specific project. Not just transit in general, but for that specific project and for intersection improvements along that route.
Yeah, my only concern, it wasn't on the ballot, so it may have misled some of the voters.
Neither were all of the streets and road improvements that we did through the bond issue specifically delineated one by one on the ballot.
Well, the ballot clearly said that the money is to be used toward road, highways, and bridges.
Which it is.
Right.
Just like the money you have at your discretion, you could spend it however you choose to spend it. That wasn't on the project.
Not on rail.
It's not on rail, Andy. It's on intersections.
It's okay. I'm just raising a concern if the district attorney agrees that it is legal and perfectly acceptable, then I'm okay with it.
Well, Andy, we
I
got that
wasn't here
approval
during the
back
time.
in 2006,
Yes, sir.
before you came on the scene.
That's why I'm asking
That's a
this
done
question,
deal.
because I wasn't there during 2006.
Okay,
I
well,
was on the committee, and of course, and we, had a ranking, and there was this money that was going to be for transit. I don't know that Tex Rail, it certainly wasn't called Tex Rail at that time, if it had a name at all. I know we had Northwest, the Southeast, but I'm not sure that name was out there in '06. None of the, as Roy said, none of the projects, it's like any bond issue, like a school bond issue, they don't list every single thing they're buying. Or, they may be building 25 schools or doing work on 25. Those are all not, none of those are listed on the ballot. They're listed, there was a committee, and that committee has that listed. And that becomes part of the record, I believe, of the court.
Anyway, when do you think we can complete this project? What's the timeline for the project?
Tex Rail will be in service in 2018.
2018. In the next 3 years, we'll be operating, active.
We'll take you for a ride.
Okay. Hopefully the voters allow me that opportunity by then. Thank you.
Any other questions? The one other thing, and you and I have talked about this a little bit, and as we move through this legislative session, or as we move forward, and I know we've talked about the strategic planning, is that as we begin to try to grow and to complete our transit, our whether it be light rail, whatever it may be, I really wish that we could work together with the highway portion of it, and that as we expand capacities on existing highways, that we leave areas, or that we designate areas that in the beginning may be used for vans, then to buses, but eventually would be there for rail as we get 15, 20, 25 years out, and the volume of growth would warrant something along that lines. In the meantime, vans and buses with cars in there too, I think is a great way to approach it, but that at some point we're going to get to the point to where light rail, DART system is now maturing out, and while it's continuing to grow, at least there's a fairly comprehensive coverage in that particular area.
Yes, sir. We appreciate your leadership on that
And
issue.
we just need to, and we talk about it, but we need to try to move forward and at least beginning to put a placeholder on whether we need to do that with TxDOT or whether whoever we need to do it with, and we need to at least begin having those conversations.
Paul,
Yes, sir.
as this train moves through northeastern county from downtown, what is being done to mitigate the noise and the, I guess we call it quiet zones for crossings where the train no longer has to blow the whistle? What is being done there?
Well, we've funded a number of quiet zones along the track, and this is where you significantly improve the protection crossing at automobile crossings so that you actually close the crossing with 4-quadrant gates, and then the engineer is not obligated to blow the whistle. So that's a significant improvement, really along the whole line. I think the other thing is that as part of this project, we're replacing the rail, the ties, and the ballast, and we're replacing it with continuous welded rail, which eliminates the clickety-clack that all the trains that use it. As you know, that freight trains use that corridor as well as tourist trains, and so we'll be significantly improving the sound quality through the quiet zones and through the improved right-of-way. And of course, the cars that we're purchasing are extremely quiet, and they have onboard. There are no locomotives. The engines are on board, or the motors are on board with the actual train, so they're very, very quiet. So I think overall we're improving the whole corridor significantly.
And again, when you looked at the funding, most of the funding is coming out of new starts. It's federal. We talked about our investment. I know the city of Fort Worth is putting sales tax in, just as Grapevine is. Again, these were cities that and citizens that voted to be a part of the deal. And then some of the stations along the way I know are by non-member cities, but for example, in North Richland Hills and Haltom City, those have been deals that have been worked out to where those cities are participating and helping to build those stations and to do that part of the deal.
We have an agreement letter with North Richland Hills that they will contribute the equivalent of 3/8 cents on the sales tax.
Which is
and
what
it
Grapevine
phases in,
elected
which is
to
what
do.
Grapevine is doing, but that's phased in. They start the contributions in 2023, and it gets to the full 3/8 cents in 2034. We don't have that worked out with Haltom City yet, but the advantage of being able to do these stations now up front is we can include the construction costs of these stations in the full funding grant agreement. So we'll be able to get up to 50% of the cost of these stations up front through this full funding grant agreement. And we've done the calculations, and the dollars that we were able to get through the full funding grant agreement roughly equal what they would be paying at 3/8 cents if they started today. So it's a really good deal for the region.
When you say full funding grant, is that with FTR with regards to the
Yes,
federal?
sir, with the
so
federal.
That's money that's set aside in the FTR and again out of the federal budget.
Yes, sir.
If not designated here, it's going to end up somewhere in the north.
Oh, absolutely. This is through the line item that Congress passes.
Gas tax dollars, isn't it?
No.
No, this would be separate from the gas tax. Our ongoing revenue for operations from the federal government comes from the gas tax, but the full funding or the New Starts money is generally appropriated by Congress on an annual basis from other revenues. But the beauty of the full funding grant agreement is that they don't tell you how quickly they'll get it to you, but they will guarantee you that you will receive the full value, and then it depends on Congress's annual appropriation. But it is a guaranteed contract. So, and we can take that to the bank, literally, once we get that full funding grant agreement.
So the operational cost of the project, the day-to-day operational cost, the ongoing cost, would that be supported by the federal revenue, or would that be supported by the ridership?
It would be a combination of federal and local. Once the project comes online, then it becomes eligible for the ongoing federal support that comes through the gas tax, and it's a federal formula, and it's very, very favorable to fixed guideway systems. So we will, as a result of adding this fixed guideway, our federal formula for operating assistance, actually is capital assistance, would go up significantly, and then the local portion would continue to come from sales tax and other local sources and fares.
Now, this gas tax revenue from the federal government that you talk about, is that designated by Congress for transit and rail?
Yes.
Okay. So if we don't use it here, is going to be used elsewhere. Is that what I'm hearing?
Absolutely.
I see.
And with regards to the sales tax locally, again, the citizens in those cities voted to apply that toward the transit system. That, in a combination with the fare box, is what's covering the annual operations of that line. For
That's
example,
correct.
DART last year, when you had the sales tax and the fare box, that covered all of their operations plus some allocation toward their capital
Yes, sir.
expense.
Sales tax, local, and then the federal funding that comes in every year on a formula basis.
Okay. Other questions?
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much.
Paul,
Appreciate
thanks
it.
for being here.
Thank you.
Scott? Appreciate y'all being here.
Members of the court, if we could move to item B, which is an update from the hospital district. Mr. Early is here to address the court at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Manius.
This your first time here since your recent...
It is, and I did want to make comment about that. First of all, I want to make sure that none of you go in your attic. If you do, don't fall through. You know, the interesting thing about it is...
Through, don't bump your head.
You don't fall on your head. Fall on something else. Fall on something that might have a little more cushion than your skull.
I don't know. I mean, in all honesty, I mean, you didn't break anything, except you did crack your skull a little bit.
I did.
But you must have had a pretty hard head.
I do. I think it's hard and fat
Jack
at the same
keeps
time.
holding up something red. What do you got? What do you got?
Does
he did
have
not
to be
ask me about
recognized?
this ahead of
Does he?
time, and he didn't get to speak today, so I guess that's the reason why he's coming up now.
You know that we're in the business of acquisition of services and supplies, and we were able to acquire from Mr. Early. This bag would cost you 5 cents in Dallas, but
Thank you.
your own personal John Peter Smith hospital gown to wear before you go in the attic, so if you take another plunge, you'll be ready for your impending procedure. But welcome back. Suck it up, sunshine.
You know, I hadn't thought about this until just right now, actually. I know that, you know, both you and your wife, I don't know if you ride horses, you drive horses, she rides horses.
Yes, sir.
And I think in her particular area of expertise, they have a little vest that you put on that you attach to the saddle, and if you pop, you know, if you jump or fall off of it, it inflates. Maybe you ought to get one of those, and anytime you go anywhere above 3 feet, you ought to attach it to where if you fall, there'll be an automatically inflatable.
I could just walk around and bubble wrap.
Well, yeah, we do need one for the head, so that might be a little bit of a problematic deal.
I would
just put on a helmet.
I could just wear a helmet at all times, and I think that's a good idea. I would say that, first of all...
Before you go any farther,
yes.
You know, just one comment, well, not an observation. Would you do us a favor that whenever you do wear that thing, that you don't wear it the way Jack wears it? Jack wears it too, where the open part is in the front, that's supposed to be in the back.
I appreciate that.
It doesn't work that way.
I appreciate it. Just depends on which way you run.
He's from Arkansas.
I would say, in all honesty, that first of all, your prayers and your gifts and your floral arrangements and your kindness was so greatly appreciated. It was amazing to be a trauma patient in the place you get to work. And I was honored to be at JPS. And I was honored to be taken care of at JPS. And I find this, people have found this strange when I say it, but quite frankly, to be here and to be okay, to be unfortunately in the same mental state I was prior to the accident, is a blessing. And I don't take it lightly. And I don't take it lightly that I've been able to be who I am and where I am. So the fact that I was able to find JPS and work there was a blessing in the first place. To be able to be a trauma patient at JPS is powerful. I will say that there were parts of the ordeal that I can remember. They were spotty. I was pretty much unconscious most of the time. I do recall, however, the ED nurse saying, "Mr. Early, at this point, we have to cut your clothes off." And I was not pleased by that at all. That was not a pleasing part of my experience, but it is what you
Probably
do.
wasn't pleasing for her either.
I'm sure, not all. Him, actually, but it was very challenging. But I will say that I can't tell you all how much I appreciate this county and the amount of people that sent me. I'm just now doing thank yous, and for the amount of people that sent gifts and emails and came by and had prayers, it meant an incredible amount. And the recovery was challenging at times, but I am thankful to be a part of this community and so honored to be a part of JPS and to be a patient, a trauma patient at JPS, and spend time in your own ICU. The board took up an issue to deal with taking two physician groups, one at UNT and one at JPS, and putting them on a common platform. There was concern raised in some, and I appreciate that. I want to tell you that I have an immeasurable amount of respect for the board that I'm lucky enough to work with. And it's hard always to have a unanimous vote. You all know that in what you do daily. You represent different views, different opinions, different constituencies that view things differently. So from a board perspective, I have great respect. From you as a court, I have great respect. Some of you have said we're very supportive. Some of you have said I have some concerns. As we move forward, I want to be able to respect every one of those concerns. We had some people come to the board that said, we too have some reservations. We want to walk through this, receive some letters, both of support and of the need to potentially delay. But I want to tell you, with all due candor, I have great respect for that disagreement. That's the process in which we all work in. So I appreciate that. We'll continue to work with your offices, whether you are for, against, in between, how you want to work this out. And nobody actually has expressed an against. Most people said, I have some questions, I have some concerns. How does this work? So I want to tell you that I'm proud of the relationship that we can establish with the University of North Texas. I think in the long run and in the short run, it's going to be better for our patients. One of the challenges that you have in our community clinics is we have 15 different clinics and they're served by 2 different sets of physician groups. That's challenging because not everybody is on the same page for how they view the objectives of what they're there to do, even how they're paid and how they deal with the issues. So to have people in one 501A being the legal term, to have them in one group, to have similar principles, similar guidelines is, I think, very beneficial. What I would like to do with the indulgence of the court, if you don't mind, is I'll be happy to individually ask questions, but I've asked, I talked to Mr. Manius about this, so I'm not hurting any protocol. I've asked Dr. Williams to say a few words, and then he and I both will be available for any questions that you all might have. We do have a board member who was coming by today as well. Mr. Charlie Powell is in the audience, and I appreciate his role as one of our 11 board members. But I'm proud of what we've done and thankful for the work that everybody put into this, even those that expressed concerns. I appreciate that very much. Dr. Williams, can you come up and accept your gift from Jack Peacham?
Yeah. Well, I learned a long time ago that you use ladders and you step from one 2x4 to the other. You don't step on the sheetrock, Robert. Yeah. I'm honored to be here this morning, and just to echo what Robert said, I think the frustrating thing about any time you're trying to do something new or different is trying to make sure you're communicating in a way that people fully understand it. And I think some of the misnomers that went around through some of the communication avenues that people just create or we create inherently had this thing as a merger of institutions. It had it as things that it was not. And I think to take it back to what Mr. Early just said, and I come at this quite frankly and honestly, I do not have a higher ed background. That's not my background. I come at things from a business background. And how I did business in the past and how I look at problems in business, and healthcare is a business, whether we like that or not, is around value. And what value do we add? And value is always related to a simple equation of quality over cost. And this was about how do we add value, and how do the patients get higher value, how do the taxpayers that support our two institutions get a higher value, and in the end, that comes down to driving higher levels of quality. And through quality, it's based on our outcomes that we produce and the efficiencies and effectiveness of that. And then through that, costs will get lower. And there are many costs that people can't even begin to count that are unseen costs of care and errors and preventable harm and those things that are going on. We know that in our national 2.9 trillion expenditure in the healthcare system of the United States, 30% of that is related to error, duplication, harm, many of which is preventable. So this was a merger of two physician groups. This is not a merger of the two institutions. It's not a merger of other operations of the institutions. It was a formation of a unified physician group through the 501A statute that allowed us to, 501A portion of the statute, that allowed us to do this, to look for standardization of quality that then allows us to work together to look for, as we improve quality, effectiveness, and efficiency, ways to lower cost and therefore add value to all the stakeholders. So that's really all I wanted to say. I do want to echo what Mr. Early said and thank each of you for your ear and for your willingness to support or at least offer different opinions on where this could go. And I will echo also what my conversations with many of the JPS board members after the meeting as we were all leaving was that no one came and told me they were against what we were doing. There were people that had issues about maybe the process we followed or other things that went on. So that's really the only reason I'm here today is to thank you all for your leadership and to tell you that we're here to add value. And that's the path we're setting. So thank you all.
Thank
very
you.
much.
Do you all have any questions that Dr. Williams can answer at this time?
I do. I
Yes.
do. And it's not a secret that I have some major concerns about this.
Some what kind of concerns?
Some major concerns. And I want to clarify up front that my questions do not mean that I'm opposing this new partnership, okay? Apparently that has been a misunderstanding, okay? Like you, Dr. William, I'm a businessman. And I believe in collaboration and leveraging resources to maximize the effectiveness and the efficiency of our services to our patients. My concerns stem from the fact that I ask questions, and instead of receiving constructive answers, my office receives stonewalling. And I don't think that I have done anything to earn that or to deserve that. In early June, Mr. Early, you met with me for about 15 minutes, and you informed me about this potential partnership. And I told you that I would be in supportive of it, but the devil is in the details. And you promised me that you would update me regularly, and then you asked me to allow you the opportunity to inform the board of managers. Do you remember that little meeting? In September, I sent you a list of 13 questions about the 501A formation. It could be an email problem. It could be a number of reasons. I never received answers to those questions. Okay? And then on January the 15th, I sent a letter to you and to members of the board of managers. In my personal opinion, that letter was completely disregarded, and to date, I received no responses to my concern. Okay. Now, I understand that this is a good potential project, collaboration and partnership for the folks, the patients of JPS. But I feel like there are some questions that need to be asked. So if I may, if it's all right with this court, I'd like to address some of those concerns. And maybe you can answer those questions, and then everything will be okay. But I want you to understand, and I want this court and the public to understand, I have a job to do as a county commissioner, and my voters and my taxpayers in my precinct expect me to do it. And if I have concerns and I don't voice it, that I would not be doing my due diligence. Wouldn't you agree? So if I ask these questions, I want you to understand that I do so in a constructive way, and that I'm not trying to stonewall you, I'm not trying to oppose the project. Is that okay with you?
If the question is to me, then my answer is it certainly is okay by me. And first of all, if you or your office feels that you were stonewalled in any way, I would certainly apologize for that. There's no intent to stonewall. There's no intent not to provide the answers to anything. Not all the answers are known at this time. Not all the intricate details. And there has been criticism by those to say this is a plan that's already been predetermined and you're just waiting to unveil it. And that's not the case. And certainly the work and the relationship that we've had with the appointees that you have as well has been very valuable. You are certainly well aware that your appointee chairs the committee that has had most of the debate or some of the discussion of this. So we're happy to continue to work with you, your office, and your two appointees, as well as all the other board members.
Right. Steve McCollum chaired the bylaws committee, and he expressed concern about we ramrodding this deal through. He asked for more time, and he was overridden, okay? So let me ask you a question here. I have a few questions about this. My first concern, as I expressed in the letter, JPS Hospital District forms this new corporation under Texas law, and I'm sure you referenced Code 281 or something in there, okay? Yes, Texas law allowed JPS Hospital District to form that new corporation, okay, and even to fund it, but it did not say anything about diluting the rights of the board of managers and this body to a third-party entity. It did not say anything about that. JPS Hospital District has the right to form a nonprofit organization and even to fund it, but it did not say anything about that. Now, I'm not a lawyer and I'm not an attorney. As I read through the law, I had that concern, and that was the reason why I wrote that letter to you, and I asked you to delay the vote for maybe a couple of days so we can talk about it. That's one question that I have. It's a legitimate concern. I don't know if the district attorney have vet the process or have even gone through the bylaws to make sure that we are doing in the future, it doesn't come back and bite us. Second question I have for you is this new corporation, is it subjected to the Texas Open Meeting Act or is it not?
Do you want him to respond as you go along? Or
If you don't mind, yes.
Okay, you want me to go back to the first question?
Yes, sir.
That you had. I don't see, and again, there's a difference between the answers and the fact that there is a disagreement of those answers, and we'll try to provide you all those answers. I don't see that it usurps power. I don't see that the 501A that's being created usurps powers. The two members of the 501A will be the University of North Texas Health Science Center and JPS. They will be the members. They will be the governing council over this 501A. This 501A is created throughout a variety of entities, JPS being one of them, in this relationship. We currently have a 501A. The bylaws of the current existing 501A.
You're referring to the JPS Physician Group?
Yes.
And the Texas, the JPS Foundation?
Yes, and there are a variety of other 501As of groups that we do business with. We have 18 different contracts of physician groups that we engage with for various services at JPS.
Yes, but the JPS Board of Managers have total control over those contracts, correct?
I don't know what total control is. Those contracts would come before the board for a vote on those contracts. which is not any different than the relationship we have with JPS-PG currently, or UNT. We currently have 4 contracts with UNT. Those contracts come before the board, and they come before the board for a vote. So if that is the definition of true control, then yes.
But once the contract is signed and agreed to, then JPS has to operate, UNT would have to operate under the terms of that contract.
Yes. We don't deal with the daily operations of that, nor does the board deal with the daily operations. They deal with the confines of a contract, but it does not deal with the daily operations.
But the JPS Physician Group, the board of directors report to you and the board of managers.
I'm sorry, say that again.
The JPS Physician Group board of directors currently report directly to you and to the
board of managers.
Okay.
Right.
So my concern here is the interpretation of the law could be different from different individuals. And that's the reason why I have a concern, okay? Now, if the district attorney or the AG put out an opinion and say, hey, this is perfectly legal, then I can sleep at night. But my job is to voice a concern publicly. And what you want to do with it is completely up to you, okay? So there, I'm voicing my concern publicly. So if you really want to put that concern to rest, then I would get a legal opinion from either the district attorney office or from an AG. And it's not about right or wrong. It's just about being cautious. Being cautious, that's all.
And just so I have the clarification, in that opinion, you are expressing an interest for that opinion to say one way or the other. Explain to me what you want that opinion to directly ask. When I ask for the opinion from either one of those entities, what am I asking?
Is it okay for a hospital district in Texas, as defined by the law of Texas, to transfer 50% of its oversight authority to a third party, provided that, and I'm assuming here, that this new corporation is going to be funded with taxpayers' money?
So much of JPS is funded by taxpayer dollars, as well as the University of North Texas Health Science Center. So to that extent, yes,
right,
you would have tax dollars that would be involved. But there are other funding sources. Our funding sources, of course, as you well know, pretty much predominantly come from a third, and a third. A third from federal pass-through dollars, a third from local tax dollars, and then a third from our own efficiencies and those who are paying patients at JPS.
Okay.
Can I ask one clarifying thing on this? Right now, when you contract with JPS Physician Group, you don't your contract with them is to provide services.
Right.
And as they provide those services, you reimburse them for the providing of those services.
Right.
In this new entity that we're talking about creating, would the contract not be in a similar fashion in that you would have a contract to provide services, and as they provide those services, you will reimburse them for that?
It is. That's exactly right.
So there is no difference between, you're not giving them a whole bunch of money up front and saying, here, we hope you operate with it the same as we've operated with it before. It is the same sort of contract that you had with the other 18 physician groups that you currently or in the past have contracted with. You're simply saying we think it could be more efficient, instead of dealing with 18 groups, that we bring them under one, and that as I understand, as it currently sits, there are clinics where the doctor's contract may be with UNT Health Science Center, the administrative and the operational staff may be with JPS, and sometimes never the two shall meet, which makes it very inefficient about providing care and quality of care. But as far as you're not doing anything differently with this new potential group, other than it's just another different contract. You're not putting money over there. It is, you provide a service, we pay for the service, just as is currently being done with the other groups.
And the thing that I would add to that analysis is that really the reason that Dr. Williams and I first got together was to have some level of alignment between the quality standards of that. It's not anything else. It purely and simply is that, to create one physician group where you can have an alignment of what those quality standards are. So,
Right, but my question here is not about the potential effectiveness and efficiency of the collaboration. That wasn't my question. My question is the structure, the legal structure, okay, of the new corporation is different than that of the current JPS physician group, okay? In this new structure, the board of managers of JPS Hospital District transfer 50% of its oversight authority over to UNT Board of Regents. Is that legal? And that is the question.
Well, you have to consider in this whole arrangement that JPS Physician Group only gets tax dollars from JPS and from the federal government. This new entity will get tax dollars from both JPS and from UNT. And to the extent that UNT is putting tax dollars into this entity, as well as JPS is putting tax dollars into this entity, then they ought to have a say over the governance as well.
And again, it's for the provision of services.
Right. So,
Dr. Williams?
I would just make a comment back to business examples. I mean, I think anytime, and I don't know if JPS has other collaborations or partnerships, but if it's a true partnership collaboration, you're going to give up control to your percent of the equity owned. So in this case, it is a 50-50 deal. It is a physician group. It's not the hospital or the university. And I feel confident in, I mean, I certainly honor what Commissioner Wynn's asking for, and we'll certainly support in whatever way we can to get the right answers for that. But I feel very comfortable in the legal opinions we've been given on both sides of the fence as we walk through this over the last several months. But I would tell you, yes, there is a sharing of governance and responsibility. But at the end of the day, the governance ends when the boards have trust in management to either perform or not perform on what it is they've been charged to do. So that's one thing I would say about this arrangement. It's no different than other partnerships or collaborations.
Is the new corporation subject to the Texas Open Meeting Act?
I think my best, I don't have the exact answer for that, but I would think no. Because I think this is a physician group.
Just as all the other agencies
I would ask this, was the JPSPG board an Open Meetings Act? And I doubt it was.
I don't think it was.
Is that a legal opinion?
I don't really know that answer. This is not a legal opinion. It's just my best understanding.
We'll certainly find out if it is open to it is subject to the Open Meetings Act. That's fine.
Are any of the physician group contracts you currently have, to the best of your knowledge, subject to open meetings?
Not that I'm aware of. They don't have open meetings. They don't take public testimony.
At any point in time, if you guys do have a current opinion and you want to voice it, go ahead. And if you're just not sure, then go ahead. But I don't want you to feel like nobody asked you. So. Okay, that's the open meetings and the diluting. Next.
Under the law of Texas, under Section 281-0565, it says a charitable organization created by a district under this section is a unit of local government for the purposes of Chapter 101 Civil Practice Remedies Code. I don't know what that means.
That's not a legal opinion.
I don't know. You see, and that's why I ask these questions. And that's why I have been trying to reach out and ask these questions. But instead of receiving constructive answers, I'm not opposing to this collaboration. How many times do I have to repeat that so people can understand? I have real concerns. And these are real concerns. It is obviously that these bylaws have not been thoroughly vetted. Then why are we ramrodding this deal through? We have plenty of time to make this right. This is a long-term structure that may outlast any one of us on this court and may outlast any one of you. So how do we make sure that we be cautious and take the interest and the rights of the taxpayers and the JPS clients at heart?
Have you had
All
attorneys
I'm
look at
asking is for us to accept questions in a constructive way.
But Andy, I guess the one thing is you have had attorneys look at it. Neither one of these folks are attorneys, so you're asking legal questions, and the folks who've done all the research in the past are not here.
And the judge.
Have you sat down with the attorneys, with any of the attorneys, Neil Adams or any of the attorneys that they've hired and done, have you sat down with any of them and asked these questions?
Judge, the authority of this court rests in this body. Based on the article of the Star Telegram, Bill Hanna on June 12th said, this discussion has started 14 months ago. So to date, it's about 20 months since this discussion started. Not once until today, not once that this body has been briefed about the reason why, how, when, where, and so forth.
I disagree with that. You may have missed that meeting, but.
What meeting?
They came in here and they talked about the fact that there was going to be, that they were looking at, Mr. Early has brought up in the past, looking at a memorandum of understanding to go forward.
So that memorandum of understanding.
Again, I ask you, have you sat down with the attorneys and asked them these questions?
The attorney for this commissioner's court is the district attorney office.
That's not what I asked, Mr. Commissioner Wynn. I asked, you've got these questions of the folks who have who are providing legal advice to this group, to the Board of Managers. Have you sat down with them and asked them this question?
With whom?
With the attorneys who have done the legal work up to this point in time to determine that this was something that could move forward.
I sent a set of 13 questions to Mr. Early in September. Okay? I sent a letter to Mr. Early and copied the Board of Managers expressing my concern. I have never once received a response.
Have you questioned our district attorney's office about these questions that you're asking right now?
I have talked to the district attorney, not in detail, not in length, but in order for the district attorney to carry out an order, it needs 3 votes. I'm 1/5.
So you've asked them for an opinion, and they've said you have to get 3 votes of the commissioners of court.
No, they did not. I did not ask in details of my concerns. But you see, that's exactly the point I'm trying to express. When I ask these questions, I merely say I have concerns, and I need those concerns to be addressed. Okay? And if you don't think those are concerns, that is your opinion, and you certainly have a right to do that. Okay? But again, I'm voicing my concern.
And Andy, I understand that, but if you've got the concern.
I'm asking right now, Judge. I'm asking right now.
But I guess the question would be why they're at a point right now where they said at the last meeting, it's critical that we go forward. Why have you not asked these and expressed these concerns and asked these questions of these folks several months ago instead of waiting until the point in time to where it's now going to delay?
No, Judge. I told you, I have asked these questions since September.
But you've not followed up with our DA's office or with their attorneys to find out what the answer was.
Okay. I think you were trying to put this on me.
You're right.
Okay.
Because I think you've waited until such a time as that you're trying to derail the project.
No. See, that is a total false accusation, Judge.
Okay, so why did you
That
wait
is completely and totally
this point?
uncalled for. I'm going to give you the respect that the county judge office deserves. I have a lot of questions.
Keep going with your questions. I'd rather hear them now than to find out, to keep hearing you say you're not getting an opportunity. So let's go on with the questions.
Is it okay with the court?
Do we have an option?
You do.
Thank you, Siri.
All right. So share with me then, in this structure, there are 2 members, UNT Health and Science Center and JPS Hospital District. Am I correct?
You're correct.
Each member shall appoint 3 members to serve on the Joint Executive Committee. Right? The 7th member of the Joint Executive Committee will be the CEO and president of this new nonprofit corporation. However, he or she is not a voting member. Okay. My question for you is, what happened? How do you deal with a disagreement that is so animate that you can't break a tie? Who's going to break that tie? It's going to be a 3-3 votes. So how is that going to be done? You may say, hey, we will work it out, we have a collaboration and so forth, and we may live in this utopia world that everybody will be agreeable, but based on my experience in the business world and in the political world, that's not always the case. So it is a legitimate question. How are we going to break the tie? Okay?
Three. You got 6 people, you got to have 4 votes. You know, nothing changes if you get 3-3.
Exactly. It will be a stalemate because 3 represent the interest of UNT and 3 represent the interest of the hospital district.
If diametrically opposed, then each other, maybe it doesn't need to happen.
Okay.
Nothing
So
happens.
that's one question. Who has the ultimate control? If it happens, it comes down to a stalemate. And I really don't want to take away too much time of this court, okay? I raised some of these, I have a few more, but I say one more time, and Judge, I do not oppose this collaborative effort. I truly believe in my heart it is good, okay? But the way that this process has been handled, in my personal opinion, it lacks transparency, it lacks inclusiveness. We need to bring stakeholders to the table and allow them to voice their opinions, their concerns, and address the concerns in a constructive way. And that's all I'm asking, okay? So if I may, I'd like to sit down with you and whoever, including the judge, and address some of my concerns. And if I agree with your answers, then I will let you know. If I continue to have concerns, then we need to address it. Or you don't have to, because obviously I don't have the vote. I understand that, and I respect that. But my job is to voice concerns because that's how strongly I feel about it. And I'm doing my job right now, and I strongly encourage you to don't take my questions as a negative opinion to opposing this partnership, which is far, far from the truth, despite the opinion of a certain someone.
That would be me.
Yes, sir, that would be you.
Okay. Let me try to draw to some level of conclusion the comments that you've made and the comments that have taken place here, which, again, I do have respect for. And I'm not going to necessarily, because I don't think it will be beneficial to go point by point, counterpoint, as far as the ability to communicate with folks, because I've heard criticism that people were left out of the process and people were not communicated with. Not in your regard, because I'll address that here in a second, but to our physicians and others, we've had a series of town hall meetings called by our doctors. We've talked with our doctors. We've communicated with our doctors. Some of the individuals that have expressed some concerns have met with me in my office, and we've had those discussions. To Mike's point earlier, to Dr. Williams' point earlier, change is a bit of a challenge for some, and I understand that. I have never, and I don't know of anybody on the staff who suggested that you are opposed to this. We clearly read your letter and understand that it said in the very first sentence that you are not opposed to that. So I do understand that, and I do respect that. And I think most in the communication of this debate understand that you do not have an opposition, you have concerns, and you've expressed those concerns. We have a process by which we try very hard to work with every one of our board members, to meet with them, to go over everything. They have the ability, obviously, to attend committee meetings, which they do on a routine basis, where these discussion items are discussed at great length. I've also had meetings with various members of the board who have wanted different insights to this. So we've tried very hard. The fact that anything is reported that discussions took place 14 months ago and this was in some kind of clandestine sort of situation. I do take opposition to that. I met with Mike Williams, and when I met with Mike Williams, I said, we have 4 contracts at UNT that don't seem to make sense anymore. We'll probably bring those contracts within JPS. But at that point, Dr. Williams said, there's a better way to do this. And I agree with him. I think there is a better way to do it than just have this sort of negative fighting over a contract. We do that 18 times in 18 different situations every 3 to 5 years, and that doesn't help our patient. Unfortunately, sometime in this discussion, not necessarily in your words, we're not including the word patient into this. And our patients are not getting the best service they could possibly get unless, and that's my job. You take your job seriously, I take my job seriously. And my job every day is to make sure that our patients get the best care they can. And I personally don't think they got the best situation they can with 2 groups that have a different attitude and are rewarded differently. And what we basically do right now is we pay doctors to see patients. We don't pay based on outcomes. We don't pay based on how many times they show up in the emergency room. We just pay you to see a patient. It's nothing against our doctors. Our doctors are wonderful. It's the system by which we set up contractual relationships. And we currently have a model at JPS that I can't find another organization in this nation that's running to have. I have not met with a single organization. I have not met with anybody that says JPS has the right answer. We think you should have 18 different disparate contracts, and you should negotiate each one of those, and whoever negotiates the best gets the best deal.
But is there a model out there in the United States that have a physician group owned by 2 different entities?
There are groups that are like that, and we took our board members to see some. We see one of those. And so we have situations. Spectrum is a little bit different, yes, but there are groups like that. And to speak to your situation.
Spectrum physician group reports directly to the board of directors.
It's a group, I understand that. But to also speak to the point that we have a medical school, which this community is proud of, in this community, and not to have the relationship with JPS, particularly with the contracts that we currently have, to not advance that and enhance that, I think would be a mistake. So I stand firmly by that.
And I understand. We talk about the needs to collaborate and standardize service and quality control and to produce efficiency in cost and effectiveness in service. We talked about that at length. You know I'm a big believer in that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? But one of my concerns is this is a trial run that we are trying to do. Okay? We have never done this before, right? So one of my questions that I sent to you in September is, okay, what is our exit strategy? If 3, 4, 5 years down the road, this doesn't turn out as to our expectation, what is our exit strategy? How are we going to deal with the liability that we already incurred in terms of debt, in terms of expenditures, and so forth? How are we going to deal with that? To me, that's a very legitimate question.
I think we would deal with it the same way we deal with the experiment we have right now, which is JPS-PG, which could be enhanced and be better for our patients. So that's what I intend to do. And any time I see anything that needs fixing, I will do just that.
Right, but I understand that. If you wait until the problems occur, it's too late. Our job is to anticipate the problems and then put forth a plan to reconcile those problems. But anyway, I think I have voiced my concerns. I have done my due diligence, and I have been outvoted. And the board of managers have already voted to move this bylaws forward. I voiced my concern. However you address it, that is your decision. Okay? And if you're interested in working with my office and with me, if you're interested in the concerns of the citizens of Southeast County, then I welcome. But if you continue to provide that void, then I have no other reasons to continue this effort, which may be deemed as unconstructive.
Well, then, certainly. And certainly I don't, yes, go ahead.
Let me make a point, if I may. That our goal here should be to provide the best health care for all of the citizens of Tarrant County that we can possibly provide. It defies my logic that a combination of two of the most critical healthcare institutions in this community, a combination of those two entities in providing health care to our citizens would not produce a better result than the scattershot approach that we've already got. I wholeheartedly support not only the combination of the two physician groups, but a much closer relationship between JPS Health Network and UNT Health Science Center in the provision of an integrated system of health care to our citizens. I would like to see a true teaching hospital relationship between JPS and UNT. I think such a collaboration between those two institutions is well overdue, and it's beyond parochial that we haven't done it in the past. We need to get past parochial concerns, turf concerns, who gets the credit concerns, and focus on a better system of delivering health outcomes for this community. I believe that the combination of these two physician groups is the right thing to do. It's the first step in a process, and I, for one, am ready to get on with it. And just as long as we're asking for legal opinions, you might ask what authority this commissioner's court has to say yes or no to this in the first place. We're not charged with running that hospital. We're not charged with contracting with physician groups. What authority do we have in the first place to even be in this discussion?
Well, I'm not an attorney, so I can't answer that question.
Well, let's get an answer. We have three attorneys sitting here.
But in my opinion,
Let's hear from the attorneys, please.
All right.
What question are you asking? In fairness.
Well, I think the question he's asking is, we have certain authorities up here as far as the hospital district is concerned. One is appointing board members. One is approving their tax rate and their budget. And then the administration of that hospital is the board of, and real estate, but is the responsibility of the administration of that hospital and the board of directors that we appoint.
And to put a fine point on it, this matter is on the court's agenda today as a briefing matter, not as an action item. And respectfully, I do not think it would be appropriate for the court to take any action today because of that. And so it's a briefing, the question will be asked. But in fairness to the criminal district attorney's office, we've not been a party to any discussions, or we don't have representatives on the JPS board. And so we're happy to respond to questions when we clearly understand them, and when they're clearly articulated. But right now, I just don't think we're in that situation. The simple fact is, as you know, there is statutory authority for this body to appoint representatives for the JPS board, and there are clearly delineated statutory actions that are mandated that this board can and cannot take. With respect to this particular question, I don't know that I understand what it is. You obviously can have this briefing, you can hear what these gentlemen are saying, and then you can work with your representatives to exercise the appropriate legislative control over JPS and the authority set out in the statute. So that's the best answer I can give at this juncture. I don't know that you're being asked to do anything today. And so the authority, you do have the authority to accept the briefing.
May I make?
But we don't have the authority to do anything about it.
I do not believe we do until it's appropriately posted. And then we can discuss whether or not there's any legal authority to take any contemplated action. But until I know what contemplated action you're asking us about, it's not appropriate for us to comment.
Well, I have a comment here. The JPS Physician Group budget is part of the hospital district budget that this court approves on an annual basis. Am I correct?
It is part of the budget, and then you have overall budget authority. Yes, sir.
That is correct. And there is about $20 million in cash right now on the funding balance on that particular entity that is currently under the direct supervision of the Board of Managers and over the direct oversight of this court. So when you decided to move that cash over to this new corporation, you can do it a year later or 2 years later. Eventually, you're going to have to come back to this court, okay? And I really don't want to wait all the way until 2 years later and raise objections. So I'd rather address those right now. And you understand my reasoning. My second concern is, and I agree wholeheartedly with my fellow commissioner, Commissioner Brooks, that we have to focus on improving patient care and cut costs. I'm totally on board, okay? But my concern is, if I receive a letter from the JPS Physician Group, the president of that group tell me that they are not opposing to the idea either, but they have been kept in the dark, and they would like to have a place on the table.
I don't think this is a proper place to debate that necessarily, but that's not.
But I do have that letter.
I understand. I have the letter as well. It wasn't sent to me, but I have the letter. And I think that is not accurate that people have been kept out of that loop.
But
that is not a fair statement.
Okay, it may not be a fair statement, but he is the president of the JPS, the board of directors, and he represents, I don't know how many doctors there are, 150 plus. So, you know, when I received that letter, it furthers my concerns, you see. So it could be 50% true, but 50% truth in this scenario is enough to cause concern. So, yes, I agree with the objective, and I agree that we need to find ways to work together. But I think in order to be successful today and in the long, long run, when none of us is here anymore, then we need to include all the stakeholders to make sure that all concerns are addressed so that we can build that unity that is needed to move this boat forward.
Commissioner Wynn, on that one point, I'll just make a comment, and that is that we, in my estimation, we worked to do that. The individual you're mentioning was actually served on a committee through this whole process, and we had representatives from both sides, JPS side and UNT, physicians who were representing physician interest on these committees as we worked through these details. So there has been an effort to include them. Now, whether they came to the meetings, I can't help that, but they were included and they had opportunity. There were also a town hall that I officiated with Mr. Whitman, open to all physicians, called by the chief of staff of the JPS hospital, and that was an opportunity for open questions, a lot of opportunities for more explanation, and which we did. And so I really have got to take an issue with someone saying in the letter that they didn't have ample time to get vetted. The last thing I would say is this. I think when you're instituting any kind of change, I'm not telling you anything you don't know, I'm just making a statement. You have to look at where you are currently. And what are you doing to improve that situation? And when we started down this road, we looked at what Robert referred to as the 18 standards of quality through these different contracts. And I was the first one, in my understanding, to step forward and say, I'm willing to put all my contracts at a quality, risk-adjusted type contract. But I think the better way to go is for us to find a way to collaborate together around one standard of quality. And why I think it's so important and so to my core of my beliefs, why this collaboration can have huge successes beyond our understanding, is if you just look 30 plus miles away from here, and you see what happens when a teaching hospital and a county hospital don't find a way to a teaching medical school and a county hospital don't find a way to truly have a collaboration, you end up with both entities building their own hospitals, and you end up with a duplication of services, a costly way of delivering care, very costly. And so there are things here that we are looking out ahead that haven't even come into the conversation yet as solutions to problems we can all avoid. So I would just say that I welcome your questions. I'm open to be any part of getting you the answers you need as it's relevant or pertinent to the county business. But those are the reasons I'm here.
Dr. Williams, my concern is not with you or UNT. My concern is the process that has been going on for the past 20 months in this entity, in this Tarrant County and Tarrant County Hospital District. Okay, and I think it's time for me to shut up and move on. I've done my job. I raised my concerns, and I respectfully ask that the leadership at JPS and this board consider some of my concerns. If not, I may not like it, but we got a lot more priorities we have to deal with. So thank you for coming out to address us today.
Sure. Thank you. You're more than welcome. Thank you.
Thanks, Robert. Thanks, Dr. Williams.
Members of the court, we have one other briefing item. That's the legislative issues. We did provide information in your court packets as it relates to Mr. Mendez's updates. One of the things that he did not include in there, because when he submitted his report, were the Senate committee appointments, and those will be in your packet next week. Senator Lucio will be heading the IGR committee in the Senate, where most of the county legislation will be going to. So we feel like he's a friend of ours, and we look forward to working with that committee and the legislature as a whole.
We're not too late to propose new legislation, are we?
No, we're not.
No. Okay. Well, next meeting, probably I will have a proposal for you.
Very good. Your Honor, that's all we have at this time.
Okay, we have a public comment. I believe Ms. Natalie Jinko would like to make a comment. Please come forward. And if you wouldn't mind, please state your name and address so that the clerk can get that in the record.
My name is Natalie Jenko. Need my city?
Yeah, address and city.
Colleyville, Texas. Oh, I'm sorry, 1104 John McCain Road. Is that it?
Thank you.
Okay, so I am here on behalf of the Tarrant County Republican Party Executive Committee. A couple months ago, we had a meeting and overwhelmingly voted on a resolution to oppose TexRail. We think it is the most enormous waste this county has seen in our history. The reason for that is their own studies show it will do almost nothing to relieve traffic congestion at an enormous and ongoing taxpayer expense. So as a conservative, I'm asking you to please stop being cheerleaders for this project and help us work against stopping government waste. Whether you're a Democrat or a Republican, you should be against this. As an example, in Austin recently, they had a vote on expanding their rail system, and it was overwhelmingly defeated as well. And it was the Democrat groups that led that and stopped it because they realize it's not helping people. It's a huge joke on taxpayers, a huge waste of money that could be used for improving roadways, which is what the real solution to traffic congestion is. Additionally, more rail equals more toll roads because it's stealing money from our transportation dollars, leaving us with a deficit that now we have to have toll roads to pay for future roadways. It's bad on so many levels. So please, please, I'm asking you, help us stop this. Additionally, excuse me, I would like to get comments from each of you with what your position is that we plan to post on a website. We're also going to address the mayors throughout the region and city council persons, our state representatives. We want to know, as voters, what your position is. Also, what you can do to help us stop this. We're building a website. We're probably going to do mailers to voters before the next election cycle. We plan to report this to every conservative group, every Tea Party group, 912 group, Republican and Democrat groups in the county, because taxpayers need to know what you're doing with our money. We have big transportation issues. We have a lot of people moving to the region. We can't mess around with things that don't address traffic congestion. I have a point sheet for each of you with the resolution that we passed on it. Additionally, just for your information, the Tarrant County Republican Assembly also passed a similar, they had a vote for or against TexRail. Judge Whitley was at that event. There were over 100 people at their Christmas party. They, again, overwhelmingly voted to oppose it. We have people going around to speak at all the conservative groups in town we have scheduled coming up, because voters need to understand this, and we're hoping that you will join us, the Tarrant County taxpayers, in stopping this waste. Thank you, Commissioner Wynn, for asking the questions you did. You're clearly a taxpayer hero, and we thank you for that. That's it. Thank you. Can I approach you with a copy of the resolution?
Give that Mr. Manius there. He'll pass that out to us. Thank you all for thank you for being here today. Is there any other business at this time?
Not at this time.
Then we'll recess our open meeting and proceed.
Well, I thought there was another one there. There is. Yeah.
Having returned from our closed session, we will now address the following matters. Commissioner Johnson.
I have a motion before we discuss any of the closed items. I would like to move that we bring the legislative issues back on the floor.
Second.
I have something I want
We have a motion second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Yesterday, I visited with our new DA, and for all the court to know, I think everybody knows this, we have had a representative from the DA's office that has been meeting with the Emergency Services District and giving them legal advice, I guess since the formation of that group. And there is nothing in the law that says that we can do that. So I asked our new DA to give me some proposed legislation, and she did that, and I think she's in concurrence with what I'm about to tell you. But what we would like to do is try to get this down to Austin to see if we can get the authority to do this like we do the hospital district. We do represent the hospital district. We'd like to get the ESD under that same law. And I'll make copies of this if we can. And
Are we agendized to take action on that today?
I think we can, I mean, it's a briefing item. In the past, we've been able to take action, but if...
I would like to let everybody see it, but if y'all want to just take a look at it.
Well, is there any, I think if we go ahead and say to Mark, we're going to get this done, get a resolution prepared, and put the resolution on next week that we unanimously...
Next week's agenda will be great.
That'll be fine. So let's just do that from that standpoint, and then...
Commissioner, if we can get a copy of it also, we'll start the drafting.
I will get this to you immediately, and I just wanted to bring it up today because I don't want it to drag. I want it to get on down there so we can at least let the legislature consider it. Otherwise, we're going to leave them out there without legal.
And we'll talk about it with at the Conference of Urban Counties and see if we can't get them to put that on their policy.
I've never checked to see how other ESDs do it, but I would assume the DA's office is representing them there, but I don't know that. But we are the hospital district, and she has looked up, researched the law on the hospital district, so that's what we're going to propose.
Anything
Whoever
else?
has that last, if you'll let GK have it, so he can get it prepared for us.
Any other,
Now, that's legal. Thank you.
any other discussion or business at this time? You're not coming forward to talk, you're just coming forward to grab. We are adjourned.